Hey everybody, Jordan Arell here, making my daily video about circumcision, and today I would like to talk a little bit about something that I think is kind of fun, which is some of the archetypes that relate to circumcision and how we can use those as inspiration to be better activists, better whatever we do around the issue, better people. And so I just want to go through a few of those. There's a book called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. I can't remember what order they're actually in, but those four things are the four sort of archetypes of men, and I think they could each apply to this issue. A warrior is someone who fights a battle and receives injuries and has to face a lot of pain. And so, when I look at my circumcision scar and think of it in that way as, this is something that was inflicted on me, but I accept it as an injury towards the greater good, because I'm, fighting against this demon now, this dragon, and it's my duty, it's my job, I take it on myself to defeat this monster, and I'll do whatever it takes. And at the end of the journey for the warrior, there's the princess or the riches and the gold or whatever that the dragon's protecting. And I think that really applies to this issue. If we can really confront it in ourselves and face that pain and change things, we are going to be able to transform the broader culture around this issue. We're going to be able to change a lot of people's minds, especially if we really go through a process of transformation ourselves, which is the purpose of psychological healing, which I'm very, very passionate about. I think everybody who has issues with this issue should go through a healing process to integrate themselves and make themselves better able to deal with this issue. So that's the warrior archetype, and it's really all about, looking at the battle, understanding it, training, going through the process of going through the pain, experiencing it, and knowing that it's part of what's required for victory, and that you really have to go into it and go through it, and ultimately that you will succeed if you are valiant and true and face that monster. So that's the first archetype. The second is king. So kings are sometimes circumcised because they are royalty, and it's a symbol of being marked as someone who's very special, and it is very unique in the world to be circumcised. It's a pretty small minority right now, 20 or 30%, but if you look at the entirety of all beings throughout all time, including all other animals and all other humans throughout all time, past and future, it's a teeny tiny non-existent fraction of a percent who's actually circumcised. So you are an elite few by having had this mutilation forced upon you, and that may not make you feel very happy or special, but not all kings take the established order that was given to them. Some of them rebel and create their own kingdom and change things. Kings are all powerful, and as a king, you may be someone who in all other areas of your life has everything you want, or has a good life. Certainly if you're in the United States, you are the most powerful, top 0.001% of people who has ever existed, just by the sheer opportunities you have. Although you may also have special talents or skills or something special about you. So for the king archetype, it's really about finding that power that you have and then deciding how you're going to use it and how you're going to build on it. You know, a king becomes a king by taking what he has and then building upon it and using it for the good of all, hopefully, and as the reward for being a king. You know, again, it's really, it's creating a good world around you. It's changing everything, because if you utilize your power, if you find that pain and that what has been passed down to you is not what you want anymore, and then you take that and rebel against it and find your own way and really work to create a kingdom that is good for everybody. Ultimately, you have a place in heaven, if you believe in that, or use that as a metaphor as well, you know, and sort of life is good. Life is good when you do good, and it's fulfilling. So that's the king archetype, is having a fulfilling, powerful life and using your power for good and using your tragedy to inspire you. So the magician archetype is the next one. I really like this one because the magician can change anything about reality. Sometimes he may have to acquire certain things to do a spell. He may have to develop his skills. He may have to go through certain trials and bizarre and crazy tasks. But ultimately, if his goal is, whatever his goal is, you know, he can transform something into something else. I like to think of this one as foreskin regeneration, because if you can find that magic within yourself, and if you can go in the right places, and if you can read the holy magical ancient texts. You know, there's a lot of books out there about entrepreneurship or social entrepreneurship or activism, and you can study these books, you can learn the skills, you can find out how to change the world around you, you can find out how to have a conversation. You can read Getting to Yes or 48 Laws of Power, understand how to influence people. And there's so many different sort of magical skills that you can acquire if you really study diligently and develop your powers until the point when you can, again, transform the world, transform people, really affect the world around you, and ultimately, you know, create a foreskin out of thin air. I think we can do that. We're on the verge of being able to do that, but it takes a lot of magic, and a lot of study and a lot of practice to figure out how we can get the right people on our side, raise the funds, get the movement congealed and all together and moving in the right direction. It takes a lot, but it's worth every step of the way. So that's the magician. The lover. Lover is the one who uses his kindness, his gentleness, his passion to change things. And so with this one, I like to think of being very gentle with how you talk to people. Being very kind, being very open, being able to listen, being able to be sensitive, and through that being able to change people's minds, to get people on your side. I just talked with Enzo Aiello today, the president of Foragin, and I was just struck by how good I feel when I'm around him. I just feel happy. Like, he's such a friendly person. He's a good listener. He doesn't give up his ideas or his power or anything easily, but he's really good at getting people on his side and making you feel like a friend. And so that's the lover, it also applies to, your own healing. You have to be a lover to yourself. You have to be kind to yourself and gentle with yourself and bring love to yourself to have healing, and as well as to heal others. But I'll get to that in a second. The God archetype is a good one, and I think of actually Jesus in particular, who's kind of the epitome of God archetypes, because he is actually circumcised at birth, and as I understand the story, his foreskin was then taken to a rock quarry, or a giant enclosed thing of crystals or whatever, and angels flew it in and then held it there until he rose from the dead or whatever, and then he rose to heaven intact, and they brought his foreskin back, and somehow it was the right size again and put it back on. So that's an interesting one. Apparently Jesus in the Gnostic Gospels, if you believe that those were also true, which I don't know why they wouldn't be, but there are other accounts of Jesus, and apparently he actually said that if men were meant to be circumcised, they would have been born that way, so he was an intactivist himself. But furthermore, the God archetype, it's one of infinite power, it's one of infinite love, it's one of all-knowingness, and it's one that's within us all. And that's the message that the Jesus story brings, is that there's this human element that we have, and that is also holds the God within it, and the God holds the human element within it. And we can all access that part of ourselves, that central archetype of the God. And in the story of Jesus, it was a huge sacrifice. It was being tortured and killed in the crucifixion, and that was what ultimately led to the resurrection and him coming back from the dead, and then basically saving all of humanity. So I don't know if any of you are Christians or ex-Christians out there. I'm an ex-Christian, and I find inspiration in that he was circumcised, and he had a lot of pain in his life, but that ultimately he recognized the God in himself and was always true to that. Always true to the infinity in himself. Always true to the highest principles that he could be, to God itself, and always would go off to the mountains and pray and find the truth in himself, find the love that God was, and then bring that to people and model that for people. The God archetype is the ultimate archetype. It's the most powerful. It's infinity itself, and we can all access it simply by opening ourselves to wisdom, to divinity, to whatever you want to call it, truth, or the higher intelligence of the universe. And so that archetype ultimately also, I think, is marked by the resurrection and the foreskin coming back. And I think that's a kind of a fun imagery to show that, it really is possible to be whole again and to come back from death, from the living death that is circumcision for so many men. But it takes being true to that. It takes giving yourself all 100% to something higher than yourself, or deeper within yourself. And so that's that archetype. A few more here. Wounded healer is kind of like lover, as I said. It's, there's this woundedness in you, but you go into that wound, you use that wound to actually motivate you, to inspire you, and in healing yourself, you then are able to heal others and bring tremendous wisdom and power forth. and help so many people just by first finding that in yourself and trusting that that transformation is part of something much bigger. I wrote a couple down here just because they're fun. Super Saiyan, for those of you who are Dragon Ball Z fans, the Saiyans, when they are defeated, always come back stronger. And the closer you are to death, the better. So this is pretty horrendous. But, and it's true in trauma. Post-traumatic growth shows that people who are traumatized actually become better people, actually become stronger, more resilient, have more empathy, and especially if they've healed, become better than they even would have been if they hadn't experienced trauma. And so, in the same way, that a Super Saiyan, is defeated and then he comes back and he's even better than he was before and gets yellow hair and all of that shit. I don't know if any of you guys like Dragon Ball Z, but Wolverine is another one from X-Men. Always gets fucking chopped up or whatever, beat up, but then he heals himself. So, heal yourself. Salamander. Again, regrow that shit. You got this, guys. You can pick any archetype you want. You can find any object, any being, anything that represents something powerful to you, and have that be your spirit animal, have that be your inspiration, have that remind you of what's possible. My spirit animals also include Johnny Depp, dragons, lion. There's a bunch others, but it's really whatever feels to you like it represents. You can pick any of these I said today: warrior, king, magician, lover, god, wounded healer, Super Saiyan, Wolverine, salamander. Whatever inspires you, whatever makes you feel like, it could be Neo if you're the one, it could be, I don't know. I'm not good at thinking on the spot. Anyways, find what inspires you and use that as your archetype. Could be anything that you want. And just take that thing and bring it to mind. Remind yourself of it every day. You can converse with it or listen to what it would say to you and imagine that it's there talking to you. Imagine yourself as it, find it in yourself and feel that and just meditate on that. There's a bunch of ways to do it. You can get creative and find what works for you, but just a fun one today, guys. Hope this has helped you or inspired you or given you some kind of idea of what you can do to find that powerful source in yourself and bring it into your work as an intactivist or as whatever you want in your life. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.